The Bird Story. So when my husband and I first met and fell in love in New York at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, we lived very different secular lives. He was in finance, and I worked with animals. Soon after we were married, I begged him, please let us find a job where we can work together and simplify our lives. Well, we did. We began working for an app company called TaskRabbit. With just one click of a button, you could have a handyman at your door ready to help with anything you might have on hand. Usually these jobs are pretty predictable. Building IKEA furniture, hanging TVs, even moving people that live in a 5-floor walk-up in the dead of summer. It was hard work, but we were together and happy. Then one day we got a call, and this call wasn't the usual. A woman in a panic hired us for the entire day to help her find something precious to her. Her pet bird that flew out of the window. Now, while on the phone with her, my husband tried to gather as much information as he could, but all he could get was, "My bird is missing! Be at my house at 2 o'clock, please!" Now, I know what you're thinking. What does this have to do with handyman work? And you'd be right, but she was paying a hefty hourly rate, and quite frankly, we were intrigued. So we jumped in the car and headed toward her home, which ironically enough was only about 10 minutes from our house. When we arrived, we knew we were in the right place. In the driveway stood a 6-foot bird cage. A fake tree on wheels stood on the lawn with bells and ropes hanging from its plastic branches, and toys had been thrown on the roof. I jumped from the car and knocked on the door, but no one came. Well, kind of. All I could hear were dogs barking and birds singing from within. She must have been out looking for the bird, of course. So while we waited for her to arrive home, we began looking for that missing bird, not knowing what she looked like or even a name. Wild birds would fly by and my husband would yell, "Look, maybe that's her," to which I would reply, "Honey, that's a crow." Finally, after about 20 minutes, the woman came back apologizing that she was late. She was hanging posters around the whole neighborhood and lost track of time. When I saw the poster, I now knew what we were looking for. A white yellow-crested cockatoo named Faith with a $5,000 reward. I looked up and said, "When did she escape? Sometime this morning?" To which she replied, "Early yesterday morning." Now for some context, this is Greenwich, Connecticut in the middle of December. I was thinking, this bird is halfway to Florida if it's been missing for 2 days. However, the woman insisted that we just had to find her. So, the search began. The woman told us that she taught Faith to talk, and has the voice of a small child. The last time she thought she heard her was in a nearby parking lot, so asked us to start the search there. So we took our small Prius and followed her Mercedes SUV. When we arrived, I noticed that in her front passenger seat she had 2 small birds. When I asked her about it, she said they were the cockatoo's friends, and maybe she would come back if she saw or heard them. To which I compassionately nodded and began searching the trees surrounding this small parking lot. Now here's where the story goes from strange to downright crazy. Let's put a stop to the cheerful music, because it's about to get real. The woman informs my husband and I she's going to start calling out for the bird. So she begins yelling out in crazy pet voice fashion for Faith the cockatoo. We tried to keep a straight face. Then she begins singing. Fly, 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 girl. Flighty, flighty, girl. I'm a flighty, flighty girl. I too am a flyer. Fly, baby, fly, fly so high. She's a fly, fly girl. She then opens her trunk and pulls out a harmonium. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a cross between a small keyboard and an accordion. And yes, she begins to play it and sing. The song was a Scottish dirge that she would sing every night to her beloved cockatoo before bed. Now my husband, who is very techie by nature and always thinks outside of the box, then has a brainstorm. I know, if the bird is going to come back to you singing and playing this instrument, how about if I record you on my iPhone and I play it via Bluetooth on my car radio? Then I can drive around with the windows down." To which the woman enthusiastically agreed. So my husband begins driving around Greenwich in our baby blue Prius with the windows down and the volume cranked to the max. I, however, too embarrassed to take part in such a joyride, continue searching on foot. And believe it or not, after 2 hours, we found her. So it turns out birds don't fly too far from home. She was tucked in a neighbor's chimney trying her best to keep warm. We could hear her soft voice calling out. So the woman busts into her neighbor's backyard, and the three of us are standing there looking up at this 2-story house. All you could see was this tiny little white head peering out of the chimney down at us. Then she yells out, "Hello there," and "I'm a pretty bird," and dips her head back down into the chimney. To this, the owner begins panicking, insisting the bird is stuck. To which I try to calm her down, saying, "Believe me, ma'am, I don't think she's stuck. She wouldn't be playing with us if she was in distress." However, she insisted she was stuck and we needed to call someone immediately. So we called the fire brigade, and they said, "Sorry, ma'am, we have better things to do with our time and resources than chasing a cockatoo." Then we called the police, and they said, "We can't help with a situation like that. Why don't you call animal control?" At that point, I called animal control, and they said, "Sorry, we only deal with wildlife, not domesticated animals." Then my husband thinks of an idea. How about a chimney sweep? So he calls a local chimney sweep, and they say, "Well, is the bird dead or alive?" To which he says, "It's alive," and they said, "Sorry, we only do removal of dead things." At this point, no one was coming. The owner started panicking, saying someone must have a ladder we can use somewhere. Then she remembers something and goes running across the cul-de-sac into her house. A few moments later, she is dragging her Christmas tree out of her living room and sets it up in the neighbor's backyard, claiming that Faith loved the Christmas tree. At that moment, the cockatoo came out of the chimney because she was not stuck, and she flew to the top of a large oak tree. To this, the woman began yelling, "Everyone keep your eyes on her. We don't want to lose her." She had hired my husband, me, 2 landscapers that didn't speak English, and a friend of hers to look for this bird. So just imagine the 6 of us running around this small suburban neighborhood. At this point, the bird is becoming spooked and flies back home and lands on the woman's roof. All of us were thinking, this is the moment, we're going to catch her. The woman starts calling out to the bird, and the bird is looking back at her thinking she is absolutely nuts. She then takes off again and flies about 2 blocks away and lands on someone else's roof. All we can see is just this little white speck in the distance. So the woman runs in her house and comes back out with, yes, a megaphone. And yes, begins singing and calling out while running into the bird's direction. Now it's approximately 5 p.m. It's getting dark, and suddenly, as she's running towards the bird with the megaphone, the heavens open up and it begins pouring down raining. So my husband and I jump in our car and begin following her. By the time we catch up with her, she was standing near a school in their baseball field, on the pitcher's mound, singing, in the rain, and in the dark. At this point, the bird is nowhere to be seen. After about 5 minutes, she decides to call it a night and does the walk of shame back to our car and hops in the back seat. "Well, I think we should call it a night. Can you guys come back and help me?" To which we agreed. We suggested that she post on her social media accounts that the bird is missing so people in the area will know. To which she responded, "I can't do that. I don't have social media to do the type of work I do. I'm a psychologist." That's right, ladies and gentlemen. You need to do your research before hiring a professional to help you with your emotional problems. Long story short, the next day she caught the bird before we got there. How might you ask? Well, she found the bird in a tree, and a neighbor let her borrow their ladder. She climbed the ladder, fell off, and then broke her foot and tore her calf muscle. She then got the bird's favorite food, and she flew right into her arms. I ended up helping her out for the rest of the week with her pets because she had quite the collection, with 28 cats, 4 dogs, and 7 exotic birds. At the end of the day, you may not sound super cool saying you do handyman work versus working in high finance. However, I guarantee you won't have great stories like this that will last a lifetime.